Hey Bernie, Tim Handren, your mayor here. Today is July 29th, just bringing you a Mayor's Minute update for our City Council meeting that we had last night on the 28th of July. We're doing our council meetings via Zoom these days. We want to give people the maximum opportunity to participate, and we feel like that if we were doing those in person, we'd not be letting as many people participate as could. Didn't have a big attendance last night on the Zoom meeting, but for our 2-hour council meeting, let me sum it up for you in just a couple of minutes. Council did discuss the charter amendments that have been brought to us by a Charter Update Committee. Short discussion last night. Those will be coming up in front of Council at the next meeting, and we will be voting on whether to put those on the ballot in November. In case you're not aware, most of those amendments are really just trying to get aligned with state laws. We did spend a lot of time talking about the 2020-2021 budget last night.
We took a very conservative approach to our fiscal year 2021 budget when we looked at our revenues. Most of our budgeted revenues are either flat or slightly lower than our fiscal year 2020 budget.
Everything from what's in the budget as it currently stands, how we go about the process over the dates over the next 6 to 8 weeks that we're going to be going through budget planning. Taxation rates, and we talked about a lot of things last night. Probably the most important thing for you all to recognize is we did accept the initial draft of the budget last night. There is a public hearing to discuss that budget in detail set for August 25th at a council meeting. And then we will be discussing our tax rate for the coming year, and there's a public hearing set for September 8th. Those are probably the two important dates I hope you get out of that. And as we go further into August, you'll be hearing much more about the budget and the planning that's going into that. We accepted a recommendation from Planning and Zoning last night regarding the Black Rifle Coffee Company and a drive-through that's going to be proposed to go in behind that store off of Main Street. We didn't make any decisions last night on that. We just accepted P&Z's recommendation, and we set a public hearing to discuss that for, again, August 25th. If you have a strong opinion about that topic, you'd be welcome to speak up at a council meeting on that day. We got an update last night from Laura Talley, who runs our planning division in the city. She gave us an update on the Unified Development Code. That's something we've been working on for over 1.5 years now. We've got that back on track. We put that on hold for a couple of months as COVID-19 took over our energies over the last few months, but that's back on track, and you'll be hearing much more about that over the coming 3 to 4 months. My expectation is that you should be seeing in the later part of third quarter public hearings about that, and the information that we're looking at on a regular basis, that'll be published on our city website, so you can start reviewing that 500+ page document that's revising all of our city codes and ordinances for how we'll build buildings in the future. I'm excited about that. That's a big deal and a long time coming. Just a couple other things that we talked about at the end of the meeting. I just want to recognize Councilman Willison and our newest council member, Councilman Bodie. They've taken on the task of looking at the Blanco Road changes that have been suggested. And they've pulled in folks from the community, some that spoke for the Blanco Road improvements that we talked about, some that spoke against the Blanco Road improvements. And really they're pulling together a small community task force to say, let's really understand if that's an idea worth moving forward on. I think it's productive that we can explore these ideas without being so absolute about it, and see what's right for our community. So I'm very appreciative of those two gentlemen for working with the city staff and looking at what we can do on that. I talked about last night, we finally kicked off the water committee that we had authorized a couple of months ago. Thanks again to Patrick Cahoon for chairing that committee. Great first meeting last week. We had folks again from all the water entities in Kendall County and actually from San Antonio, right? We had Edwards Aquifer Authority, SAWS. We had the WCID #1, which is really the water company in Comfort, Texas. We had Kendall West Utilities. We had representation from Kyle Biederman's office, from Donna Campbell's office, and some other folks from the staff and the community. I was very excited about the discussion we had because it was the first time we had this group of people in one room to talk about all things water in our community and what can we do from primarily a conservation standpoint, secondarily from a supply standpoint. I expect that we'll hear a lot more about that over the next several months. There's no deadline on what the group is working on, and right now they're starting with the big data gathering mode. We are going to put a website out there that's going to be called KendallCountyWater.com, and it's going to be very public what's going to be done with that group, much like what we did with the Transportation Committee. Good stuff coming. That was everything we talked about in the council meeting last night, so that's kind of the 3 or 4 minute version of a 2-hour meeting. Again, glad we could save you the time. Just want to wrap up with one thing, the numbers related to COVID-19 in Kendall County. Last night the update came out. We have 10 active cases in Kendall County. And while that number is remarkably low, you'll recall last week that number was over 70. The very next day that number went down to 0. I can't explain how DSHS is changing their rules from day-to-day basis, but they have changed their rules pretty frequently over the last 2, 3, 4 weeks. And last week they made a big change in the way that they're counting active cases. They're just going to let the calendar determine that you fall off the active list after a certain amount of time passes from the time of reporting. That's why there was a big change last week. Over the last couple of days, they've also changed how they're going to count who gets counted under the column of having died as a result of COVID-19. As DSHS continues to make changes in terms of how they're reporting and counting, again, that's the only place that we're going to for our source of truth. We'll continue to stay vigilant and report. I know a lot of you are following their reports daily. That's good. Probably the most important thing I get from that is looking at our neighbor next door, San Antonio. They had one of their biggest numbers yesterday, over 1,500 cases reported yesterday. They continue to be a hotspot of COVID-19 spread, so my encouragement to all of you is to continue to do what you're supposed to do from CDC's standpoint, right? Social distancing, wash your hands. If you can't social distance, wear your face covering so that we don't have a massive impact to our healthcare system. That's all for now, Bernie. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.